Why, hello there, adventurers and aristocrats alike. Shams Nelson here from Fantastic Anatomy, and in today's video, I'm going to be taking you on a tour of Shama'zia, the map that we started working on in part 1 of this video. So if you haven't checked that out, go watch that first. I guess you don't have to, but in this video, I'm going to focus on the world building aspects of it and how I use the geography that I kind of created at random to inform all sorts of like story prompts and world building ideas. So let's begin down here in so I've divided this into little sections, each kind of representing a different kingdom. So here, let's look at these guys right there. So these guys, this is a valley, a very fertile valley. See, surrounded by mountains, it rains probably a good amount, and the land's open, it's not forest. So it's a good place for settling down, farming, raising livestock. I pretty much assume that all the empty areas, that see this line kind of denotes that it's less fertile. That's how kind of it's like the drier plains. But any place that doesn't have any markings on it, I assume that's good farmland. So those are the kind of areas that are going to be settled by people. And so we have Castle Stephen over here. And the thing about this area is you've got the nomadic peoples to the north who are like pretty much like the Mongols, ride around on some kind of beast that crosses these deserts. And like maybe these guys are giant falcons. So they ride these giant falcons. No, because then they want to live in the mountains and stuff. So they ride some giant, I don't know, badgers, and they're great archers. So they're hard to track down. They just travel around with their herds because if they stay, there's not enough grass and stuff to support a permanent settlement. But there are these two camps here, Camp Salim and Camp Sahr. So, and those are more permanent camps that arose because of the trade networks between all these places, which you'll learn about in this video. So the idea is they're pretty protected from this side and from this side, but down here, there's you'll notice that there's just one landmark. So one thing to consider when doing maps is who created this map, because it really will reflect that person's perspective. There'll be more details in the areas nearer or more familiar to the person who made the map. So in this one, I'm saying that the map is probably made by these guys, and these guys are like the main human kingdoms, Castle Rumpkin and Castle Stephen, so the lands of Stephen and Rumpkin. And so it's kind of like from their perspective, I would say. So these guys, so I came up with this story that this whole area is inhabited by like Aztec type savage tribes that like live off human sacrifice. And so you see here's a volcano. So across from the volcano, right, so the sun would set into the mouth of the volcano each night, and when the full moon rises, they have to do like these sacrifices. And so they discover earlier on, before Fort White was here, there was a village, but the whole village was taken as slaves in a surprise attack by these guys and taken back here and sacrificed like once every full moon. And then so that could be a prompt for Dungeons and Dragons type adventure where you've been taken and then you get called on one full moon, and so you and your friends have to escape back to the lands you came from. So we have the Timberwood and the Eckenswood. So this area was like the main area of the lands of Stephen, but they found a pass through the mountains and started settling these lands as this place became very populated. The thing is, this mountain pass is very difficult to get through, and so these lands have a little more independence. They don't have castles. The king doesn't have quite as watchful an eye on them. And so let's say this city right here, Vancordia, is a bigger city because it kind of facilitates the trade between these two areas, and so it gets a lot of traffic and all supplies have to go through there. So I had the idea that Vancordia is run, since this part of the kingdom has to be more closely watched, they need it's kind of the capital of this area, let's say. and the brother of King Stephen is the administrator of Vancordia, but he has struck a deal has kind of struck a deal with the Dark Elves. So the Ekans Woods used to be the Elven Woods, and the elves the wood elves who lived here were like, they're chill, they're cool, they're wood elves, kind of keep to themselves. But there are dark elves in the Underdark underneath here, and there are entrances to the cave here. So they've kind of been locked in this battle, and eventually the dark elves win. And once the wood elves see that the dark elves are winning, they decide, okay, let's move away up here where we can establish some safe base. Apparently that was a good spot. And they call it Elfdale, and there was like a mass exodus of wood elves, and they all moved kind of to there. In the meantime, this area has become dark elf territory, and so while they live in the Underdark, they have like all these cave entrances and stuff that they come out of. And so they've been attacking these cities, and the brother of King Stephen has been requesting more military troops from Castle Stephen to fight off these dark elves. What King Stephen doesn't know is that his brother is in league with the dark elves, and he's like allowing these attacks to happen, and he wants to get a lot of the king's military killed off so that they're weak, and then the dark elves and him will attack, and he's struck a deal with them that he'll become the new king once they take over. But will they honor that agreement is with something we have yet to see. So that's another place where you could have an adventure kind of surrounding that whole conspiracy. Sure, there are lots of ways you can work some adventures into that for sure. So let's talk about Elfdale. So moving on up. So Elfdale was settled, and as you can see, it's kind of the midpoint between the kingdom of Rumpkin and the kingdom of Stephen. So there's this trade route right here that goes this way. And so these lands are newer. So let's ignore them for now. These lands of Stephen and Rumpkin are older, and obviously the elves have been there since before even mankind. But and we'll talk about these guys in a little bit. They're more like Vikings. So Elfdale was kind of in the middle, and the elves are really chill about like all different kinds of people and kind of, I don't know, laid back, as long as you're not pure evil like the Drow. So so humans settled in there, all sorts of people. They don't really like, they're fair about taxes and stuff like that. It's a good place to live, Elfdale. And so if you're an entrepreneurial type in this world, that might be the place to go. And look, they're even connected to the nomads. So there's trade going on from all over the place. And you don't really want to cross over here because the nomads will often plunder these trade routes, come in here to plunder this trade route right there. Which brings me to my next point. So let's go up to Castle Rumpkin. We're going to be talking about the coasts and why people will transport goods by sea rather than by land. It's a little faster, I'm sure, and should be not a very bumpy ride if it's not for pirates at the Pirate Bay. But let's get back to Castle Rumpkin. So I'm looking at this area, and it just seems like an open area, and I'm trying to think like, what is the character of this land? I don't see too much going on with the geography. You know, these guys, they've kind of sheltered in, and I don't know, I imagine it to be like a peaceful valley and stuff like that. So there may be people who don't like want for luxury items too much and stuff like that, but just kind of setting their nice way of life. But I wanted something different for this. So here I added these hills, and I added some villages that or some settlements where they're mining gold. So this is like the big gold rush area. And the thing with King Rumpkin is he's kind of grumpy, as I mentioned in the first video. So he's very reserved and kind of doesn't have great ambitions for his kingdom. He kind of would prefer things to stay status quo and not have to worry about, you know, the extra responsibilities of running a larger kingdom. But he does also tax the people quite a bit because it helps maintain the status quo, and he's a little greedy. So so this river right here, I put this river, and this is like, these are the this is North River and this is South River. Okay, so South River is the place closest to Castle Rumpkin, which is the self-imposed capital. But Ardea is kind of this big city, and it's kind of making King Rumpkin nervous that Ardea is gaining a lot of, like, it's really becoming more of a center than Castle Rumpkin. So he demands that all anything that comes from the south by the trade route should not be should has to come through Castle Rumpkin. So in Alina, you'd have to register your goods and have it tallied and stuff, and then they tally it up here and make sure it's the same marks, and if not, then you could get in trouble and stuff like that. And they tax you pretty heavily at Castle Rumpkin, and they also tax heavily at this bridge over here. So so getting across the bridge with these gold, you would get taxed. So what they would do is they started having ships come down with the gold and dropping it off either here or here. And I figured that the navy, like side of this kingdom of Rumpkin, don't really like the way Rumpkin is running things, King Rumpkin, and so they are more susceptible to bribes and stuff. So he taxes the cities based on the recorded income. But instead of recording that something came in, you can just take a little bribe in your pocket and then just not write down that that ship dropped off those supplies. So it'll go untaxed and you'll pay less taxes and make more money. And since he's kind of unfairly taxing anyways, most people don't feel guilty about that because they don't think he should be taxing as high as he is, which is fair. And in this area, so this is like the delta. So this is more like the smaller rivers, and it's easier to cross here. And there are all sorts of bridges built over these smaller streams and small rivers where it splits off into a delta. So even like hidden bridges that people will use to smuggle goods to South, to South River. And they call this the Cock of the North because they're this other settlement right on the other side of this peninsula. And first off, it smells like it's kind of an impromptu city. It wasn't commissioned, so just people started living there. So there wasn't really a sewage system set up. So the sewage goes into these canals that smell really bad, and the city on the right here is kind of where you would drop your supplies off if you didn't want to go around into here. Maybe there's extra. So they're both kind of impromptu cities and more ramshackled and stuff. This one is a little more official, but it's neglected. He doesn't want it to grow into another city. So he doesn't really like upkeep it very well or encourage trade and stuff. But anyway, so all this trading of gold. So the place that also popped up is this city over here. It's another impromptu city, but it's better kept because there's more money. And I haven't figured out what the governing system that could be interesting. Maybe it's a settlement of people there is no government, but it gets to a point where they're like, okay, we need to get someone to start organizing things like a septic system and like police and fire safety, stuff like that. Anyways, so that could be an interesting side plot. Okay, well, you come to the city and they're looking for leadership. Maybe your PCs want to do a city planning campaign. But anyway, so this gold trade across the coast here, going up and down, obviously would give birth to pirates. And the pirates needed a place to dock their ships, so they used this bay, which is dotted with caves and stuff. And this little city is like the pirate capital. It's called White Flag because you're not allowed to start trouble there. And I was thinking it's actually not a walled city, but like a cave that comes in from the sea, and all across the sides of the caves there are these buildings built on stilts, like against the cave wall. It's like a huge cavern, like a ship would easily fit into it, 100 feet tall. And so there's all these buildings made of wood stacked on top of each other with pillars, and you can just pull up your boat and climb up a ladder and go to a tavern and stuff. And then there is a slight outer city once you get to the cave opens up into the land, so there's maybe a wall there and a little bit of an outer city where things aren't as crazy. But it's pretty much like the Sin City of Shama'zia. So as this developed, there would be, trade coming in and out of here, but some honest people saw that there was land here and wanted to set up their own kingdom. So what I figured is this guy, settled here. then people were like, okay, well, we're fishermen, so we want to live by the ocean, so they set a bay here. A city on a bay here. Then, some other cities come up near this lake, over here on this bay, and of course the river, the bridge where the river is. And so they're always kind of in fear of pirates attacking, so that's why this is kind of the walled city, which is the capital of this area, but also this would be more defensible city as well, just in case. This, I'm thinking, is like sheer cliffs on these sides, so the thing is, the cliffs are like this angle, so there's sheer cliffs here, and then it kind of dips more down into the water at a declining angle here. So you can't really build like a port city on these sides, and it's protected from attack that way too. So they'd have to come up on the land or come in through this side. But anyways, so that's another idea of a little kingdom. And so I think you can see how like the geography plays a huge role, because now you're thinking like, if you're going to play a battle, what if they figure out a way to scale the cliffs, and all of a sudden from the northwest there's just a huge army of pirates up there, and you're like, oh no, we didn't expect this to happen, but I don't know. So fun stuff like that could happen. We got the Goblin Hills. Goblins live here, they can cause trouble. That's always good. I figured the Forgotten Forest is kind of like the Feywild. So it's said that if you are traveling this forest, you will forget who you are eventually, and because the fairies will steal your memory or something like that. So it's a natural border, like all sorts of adventures could happen there, but no civilizations kind of live there. So now like getting to these guys are like the Vikings, and I had the whole idea that each one of these cities is its own little city-state, but there's these like I forget, wait, there are dragons living here, that's why no one lives here. And aside from that, and like gnolls and stuff live down here. I forget what I was getting at. Anyways, so they built this Castle Kelix because I guess just as there's true silver in there, the best material for forging weapons and swords and stuff. Weapons and armor. So they built a castle there to defend it, because it's like the dragons are going to be like, hey, let's get some of that, and so they could easily burn down a village. They needed something more defensible, like a castle. So it's specifically designed to fight back dragon attacks, and each of these villages and it was built as collectively by all these people. So each of these villages have a stake in it. The way they decide the leader is whoever is the strongest. So the leader can be challenged by the leader of any other of these kingdoms, and into one-to-one combat, and then whoever wins becomes the new king of Castle Kelix. And they kind of decide, like, they pay some kind of tribute, and the king gets to decide however he wants to spend it. So if the king is from Elix, then he'll probably spend it making Elix even more awesome. So there's a lot of, like, people want their leader to be the king, but not just anyone can challenge the king. The leader has to. So in some of these city-states, like Reknar is one of the most hardcore. I'll tell you why in a second. But any leader can be challenged. Any person can challenge the leader of Reknar to one-to-one combat, and if he wins, he becomes the leader of Reknar. I should have a name for the leader. What would be like the Viking name? The chief? I don't know. But if you know what the name of a Viking leader would be, let me know. That would be interesting in the comments. And Reknar loves to do. The people of Reknar are like the Spartans, and they fight with these. They fight with these gnolls. Excuse me. They fight with these gnolls to the south, and it's become such a tradition that they even meet on specific days based on like the moon or the sun position, to do these huge battles, where just for the sake of battle, because the gnolls are just naturally bloodthirsty, and the people of Reknar find it's like a source of pride to see how many gnolls you can kill. That's how you show your status in society. So they're just like super tough. So they're usually the leaders of Castle Kelix, but they're not the most responsible with money. I guess Reknar would probably be pretty darn nice, considering this paradigm. So I don't know, that's something to think of. So and they've been separated, so their culture is going to be you know, they don't have like everywhere here kind of has the idea that like, yeah, there should be laws and there should be like order, and farming is a, I don't know, whatever. There's a more similar cultural context in this region. These guys do their own thing, so there should be some kinds of like the idea that they kill each other to see who's the leader, and not as much cultural crossover between these. Like you wouldn't see people from these areas in here very often, or people from these lands over here very often. So is that it? I think that covers it. We talked a little bit about these guys, but I think that's all you need to. And then there's all these things like, okay, look at this little lake. Oh, I was thinking like here, this lake up here in the mountains behind Castle Kelix is like a holy land almost. Maybe lots of like the monks, the weaklings who choose a life of peace and not battle, as they are thought of by most of the people in this region. But they're really just like monks kind of things, or clerics, who go and retreat into the mountains and the caves up there and just live like a hermetic life. And that's it. Cool. So, I don't know, I have a lot of fun thinking about these things. I wonder if you guys do too. I know there are people out there who love world building like me. A shout out to Big Dave. But, yeah, man, I think that's pretty much it. So, peace, God bless, and stay fantastic, everyone.